What is deployment? It is used to tell Kubernetes how to create or modify instances of a pod that holds the containerized applications. So the deployment can scale the number of replica pods or enable rollout of updated code in a controlled manner or roll back the other deployment versions if necessary. So let's see how the YAML files of the deployment looks. Here we have the API version and the kind would be the deployment. In metadata, we mention the name of the deployment, and in the labels, we give the label as app server. So this is very important because this is the one matching with the other pods, services, whatever it is. Then comes the specifications. Here we mention the number of pods, that is the replica sets we wanted, and the selector. We have the match label. So this is the match label which is used for matching the label for the deployment with other services, pods, etc. So then comes the template. This is or related to the template is related to the pod. So it is the data of the pod. Here the label we mentioned same as the matching label, and the specs, we give the containers. Inside the container we give the details of the image. And right now we are creating nginx image and we are exposing it to the 8080 port. This is about the YAML file. So suppose now with this file we have to create a deployment. So we run this kubectl apply command in order to create the deployment. Once the deployment is created, we can see the status using rollout status. And if you wanted to know more details about the deployment, we can use the get deployment. So when managing this Kubernetes cluster, the initial step would be to check for the successful deployment or not. So for this purpose, the rollout status is very important. And now we have to get the number of replica sets. So we use this particular command. And if you wanted to get the pod under the particular selector which we have given, so we can use this particular command. And if you wanted to set the image, so if you wanted to change the deployment, suppose nginx version is updated, so we can use this command set image deployment, and we give the newer version, and then we can check the status to know the status of that particular nginx image which is running or not. Or else we can also do the edit deployment. In order to edit the nginx deployment, it opens the YAML file, and there we can make the changes and run the particular and save it, so that the deployment strategies is applied. So we have two types of deployment strategies, that is recreate and rolling update. In recreate, it deletes all the existing pods of that particular deployment before creating the new pods. But in rolling deployment, we are going to recreate the pods once in a rolling manner. What is that means? It will delete the pods gradually without interrupting the application availability. So this is based on the two parameters, which is max unavailable and max search, which is maximum number of pods that can be unavailable in a particular time frame and maximum number of pods that can be created. So based on this, only few one by the pods are created, or for the new deployment one by one. So for knowing more about this strategy, which strategy we are using, we can use the describe command to look into the deployment. Using grep strategy, we can exclusively look into the strategy. And as usual, for the replica sets, we can use the get replica sets. And suppose we wanted to pass a rollout and we have already rolled out and we wanted to pass it, we can use rollout pass in order to stop pass. And also we can also resume the particular in between. We can make some changes to that deployment, and then the new changes are reflected when once we resume this particular rollout strategy, and then all the other pods will be replaced with the newer pods. So if you want to scale the deployment manually, that is the number of replica sets, then we can use a scale deployment and we can see the status. Suppose we wanted to do auto scaling based on the CPU availability, it has to increase the number of replicas like minimum 5 and maximum 10. We can do that. It is known as auto scaling based on the CPU percentage. Here we are using the CPU percentage as 70%. So rolling back the deployment. This is very crucial for any project because suppose if we are choosing a wrong image and then started with the deployment of the production, slowly it makes the production go down immediately. So to avoid that, we can use this undo deployment. So this is for checking. First, before doing this, we have to check whether the revision which we are doing the undo for the revision is exactly revision 3 or 2 or maybe 1. So we can check that using the status, and then we can decide whether to undo the deployment. So this is all about the deployment strategies and deployment.